Two legends clash in today's game from the World Blitz Championship, the FIDE Championship. It's Hikaru Nakamura with the white pieces and the great Alexander Grischuk with the black pieces. Nakamura, his blitz rating was 2909 in this game. Grischuk was 2763. 3 minutes for each side with a 2-second increment. Let us jump right in. Nakamura begins with the move e4, and Grischuk plays e6, the French defense. d4, d5, and Nakamura plays knight to d2, the Tarrasch system. The idea is he doesn't want to block his c-pawn so it can later come up and support the d4 pawn. It's a slower move, but a little more positional, a little more secure. Grischuk plays the move c5, which is the most popular move nowadays at the top level. The sharpest move is knight to f6, directly attacking the center, and after e5, gaining space, and basically black attacks white's center, and white defends the center. White seems to be doing okay in these lines these days, although it's certainly playable. But c5 was played. The idea of the main line here is white takes on d5, and black retakes with the queen. You can take with the pawn too, but the queen is usually takes, and what you get is basically a Scandinavian opening, but now this knight is not on b1 to gain a tempo by jumping into c3, and black seems to be equalizing in these lines. But instead of that, Nakamura takes on c5 first. I think his idea, the trick is, this isn't the most common move, but is after bishop takes c5 to play knight to b3. And then when the bishop moves, then you can take on d5 and sort of force an isolated pawn on d5. So to avoid that, Grischuk plays knight to f6. This way, he can always be assured of capturing on d5 with a piece and avoiding the isolani. ed5, and he goes ahead and takes with the queen, and this is a position you can get in the queen d5 line that I showed you. And knight gf3 was played. You may ask, well, what happens if he plays knight to b3, trying to hang on to that extra pawn? Well, after queens are exchanged and king takes d1, black just develops naturally. Knight bd7, a6, bishop e7, and in this position, even though he can't capture this c5 pawn just yet, black has plenty of counterplay, and play has shown that black is doing okay in this position. So instead, Nakamura just plays knight g to f3, queen takes c5, bishop to d3, bishop to e7, and here Nakamura plays a novelty, a4. And although the move is a novelty, the idea is not a novelty. Basically, what he's saying is if black tries to develop this bishop by playing b7, b6, he's going to play a5 and create a weakness on the queen side and maybe open lines up for his a1 rook as well. So castles, the queen moves to c7, so when this knight jumps, it doesn't hit the queen with tempo. c3, now b6, just as we were saying, sort of an ideal way to develop this bishop is on b7, but now a5. And at the moment, this is a pawn sacrifice, pawn takes, because the pawn is defended once and attacked once, but the pawn is quite weak, and it'll be really hard to keep it protected. And you can see now these pawns are unhealthy, and Nakamura's pawns are quite strong. Knight to b3, aiming for that pawn. Knight to c6, defending it. Bishop to g5, bishop to b7, and then he goes ahead and takes the knight. Now, so why would you give up the two bishops like that without even being provoked? Well, he has an idea, which you'll see here in a second. Bishop f6, and here's his idea, knight to c5. He's going directly after this b7 bishop. What he wants to do is take the bishop, then play bishop to e4 to pin that knight, take on c6, and then the a5 pawn will be hanging. It happens in the game, so you'll see it unfold here, but it's kind of hard to explain. But Grischuk plays rook f to d8. Now that, of course, is a pin on this bishop. So, first of all, Nakamura goes ahead and takes the bishop on b7, the queen recaptures, and then queen to c2. So he attacks the h7 pawn, threatening to take it with check, but he also, even more importantly, steps out of the pin with tempo. And so g6 is played to keep bishop from h7 being played. And now this is the idea. Bishop to e4. That's why he gave up the two bishops in the first place. Bishop to e4, pinning the knight, and then when this knight is captured, there's no way to keep the a5 pawn defended. Queen to b6, takes, and now rook takes a5. And so the material is equal, and black has a very nice bishop, but if you compare this pawn with these two pawns, you can see white has a much healthier pawn structure. Rook to d7, rook f to a1, doubling against the pawn on a7, rook to b7, h3. Now here's a great positional question for you. What is the best square on the board for this bishop at f6? I mean, if you could just pick it up and put it down anywhere on the board, where would the best square be? That's right, the best square is b6. Not only does it defend the weakness at a7, but it's on a very strong diagonal, aiming at f2. So Grischuk plays the move bishop to d8, rerouting the bishop to that very strong square on b6, rook to a6, bishop to b6, and black has done a good job of putting that bishop on its ideal square. Nakamura plays c4, advancing his passed pawn, the one on the pawn majority on the queen side. Rook to c8, putting pressure on the pawn, now b3, and queen to c5. Now, Grischuk has done a very good job here of blockading these pawns and robbing them of their mobility. Not only that, he is currently putting pressure on the f2 pawn. I mean, it's defended by the queen, but the pressure is there. Rook to d1. Hikaru says, my pressure against a7 didn't work, so I'm going to have to reroute. The first thing I'm going to do is try to take over the d file, so he moves his rooks back. Rook b to b8, rook a to a1, and now rook to d8. So he just challenges white on the d file, so he won't get control of it. g3. Nakamura wants to play the king to g2, so there's no pin on this f2 pawn any longer. a5, fixing in place these pawns. He's blockaded these dark squares. Grischuk has done a really good job of handling that pawn majority. King g2, bishop to a7. Pair of rooks are exchanged. Then rook to e1. He doesn't want to exchange both pairs of rooks. He wants to use this rook either to support a knight moving to e5, or he might even play the rook to e5 himself at some point. Bishop to b6. And black, again, has done a very good job here of holding white's initiative. So we've seen that he's blockaded white's queenside pawns. Where then will the white pieces get activity? I mean, where can he generate some counterplay? Well, on the king side. You'll notice there really aren't any black pieces defending the king side. So he begins with h4. The idea is to play h5 and reduce black's king's cover. h5 prevents white from playing h5 first, and now knight to e5. And Nakamura already has a very serious threat. He's threatening knight takes g6, and after pawn takes knight, queen takes knight check, black's king would be laid bare and he would be quickly mated, quickly finished off. So to stop that, Grischuk plays king to g7 to defend that g6 pawn. Rook to e2 adds to the defense of f2 and makes it so the queen can now move if she needs to, because she was the only one defending f2. Bishop to c7, aiming at that knight. The knight goes to f3. He wants to attack, he's going to need that knight. Queen to e7, and now knight to g5. Again, the knight aims at f7, and perhaps it could cause some trouble with the sacrifice on e6. Queen to f6. Now, again, we'll ask ourselves a positional question. What is the weakest square in black's position right now? Well, the weakest square is f7. If he can attack f7, he's already got the knight on it. If he can get another piece attacking f7, then he might be in good shape. So how does Nakamura do that? He plays the rook to e3. The idea is he wants to play a rook lift to f3 with tempo and attacking the f7 pawn. So Grischuk has to do something about that. He needs to move his queen, otherwise he's going to be in trouble. So queen to d4. Okay, turns out that move is a blunder, although I'm not exactly sure what he can really do here at this point. But this move actually loses, because Nakamura's next move, rook to f3, actually wins the game. There's no way for Grischuk to effectively defend the f7 pawn. It may look like he can, but he can't. The move he played is the one that seems most natural, makes most sense. Rook to d7, right? So the king and the rook are both defending f7. So why is it still losing? Well, do you see the tactical blow that Nakamura delivers here? That's right. Rook to f7 check. Black resigned actually one move before this was played. After he played rook to d7, he resigned. The reason this loses is because after rook takes rook, white has this move, knight takes e6, check, forking the king and winning the queen. Any king move would have been futile. Also, it would just be over. And in this position, Nakamura won another great game at the FIDE Blitz Championship. Now, even after going over this great game from Nakamura, there are still some great chess that you're missing out on. To fix that problem, believe it or not, the key game you're going to want to watch is in this video right here. So make sure to watch that one next for some really mind-blowing chess. Goodbye.